Hey everybody, welcome to our online author series. Today we are, oh crap, they just told me their last names, and just like every time I'm going to get it wrong. Okay, we have Tracey Livesay. Okay, and Sarah McLean.
That's right.
Okay, good. No matter what, I always get that wrong. I should get the authors to send me their names, like record them, and then I should just listen to it over and over again because it's. Oh. But I did read your books and I did enjoy it. So I may not be able to pronounce your names, but I do like your books. Okay, so let me introduce you guys real quick, and then we'll get started. Okay, Tracey is a former criminal defense attorney. She finds crafting believable happy ending after slightly more challenging than protecting our constitutional rights, but she has never regretted following her heart instead of her law degree. She has been featured in Entertainment Weekly, The Washington Post, and CBS This Morning. Tracey lives in Virginia with her husband, who she met on the very first day of law school, and their 3 kids. That's so cute. Okay, Sarah, your turn. A lifelong romance reader, Sarah wrote her first novel on a dare and never looked back. She is a New York Times and USA bestselling author of historical romances and a columnist for the U.S. Washington Post, where she writes about romance genre. She lives in New York City, and you can find her at www.sarahmclean.net. Okay, good.
Correct. That is all true.
That part was not fiction. So, and if anybody has a comment, please put it over here, and I will put it to the screen. So, hey.
Hi. Hi, oh, that's so fun. Gosh, StreamYard is, and this is not a StreamYard commercial, but it is a much nicer platform than YouTube. Yeah. And then, not YouTube, then Zoom.
Zoom, yeah. And we stream this, so this is live on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page, and then people can come back later and watch it.
I love it.
So we're Tracey, I actually met you at ABA when it was in Baltimore.
Oh,
it's okay if you don't remember me. It was a large room and there was a lot of people.
No,
I think the first question was, where do you live? Can you come visit me? And you're like, I live here. And I'm like, oh, no, never mind. It's like a 10-hour drive.
Yes.
Hi, Georgia. Hi, everywhere else. The best thing about coronavirus is the silverest lining of coronavirus is that we all get to do this from all over the world now.
Yeah, I'm talking to so many authors that I have never met or had a chance to get in my store, and this is awesome. So you guys should follow our YouTube page, please. I'll put that out there. I'll put it in the comments. Okay, so let's see. What should we talk about? Let's talk about, can you guys tell us a little bit about your books coming out? Who wants to go first? We can do rock, paper, scissors.
No, Sarah goes first because her book is already out.
Okay.
I was going to say Tracey should go first because her book is coming out. So,
well, as I said, rock, paper. I've been trying to get authors to do it for a while. So, come on.
But the important information here is that you can buy both of our books from Read It Again Books.
You can
online. So.
I'll put the link right now.
I'm Sarah McLean. This is my book, Daring and the Duke. I still 4 months into this, and I still don't know how to turn things or what way to tilt my head when I'm looking at myself. Anyway, I write historical romances set in Victorian England, and my most recent series, The Bare Knuckle Bastards, finished in June. End of June. Mm-hmm. What month is it? In June with Daring and the Duke, which was the final. It was the big bad villain turned hero, and the heroine who he has loved for his entire life. And they had a lot of baggage to overcome. There's a lot of fighting in this book. It's childhood, first love to enemies to lovers is the trope of this book. And the heroine now is in her 30s, and she runs a ladies' pleasure club in London, which is loosely based on the ladies' pleasure club in Magic Mike XXL, which I believe is the greatest feminist text of our day.
BTW, I went to high school with Channing Tatum.
Oh,
Stop.
really? Well,
Yes.
thank him for his contribution to the feminist archive.
He sat in front of me in the room for a couple years. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's nice.
That's my claim to fame.
I mean, there are worse things to look at than the back of Channing Tatum.
Even
I'll say about that.
Even when he was little, still.
Well, he was just like.
Well, isn't he still little? I don't know. He seems young.
No, he's a big guy. Well, he's
little.
in his 40s. But no, he was never little. He just like came out of the womb at like 6 foot and beautiful. So
that's how I feel about other, Tracy and I have talked a lot about Henry Cavill in our in our special text threads. And that's how I feel like we both like a thigh.
Yes.
Is what I'll say.
But Henry, he was kind of like the awkward geek when he was growing up. Have you seen pictures of him as a teenager?
He's still an awkward geek. I'm sorry, everyone.
Say that we have seen pictures of him when he was younger. Deep dives have gone on. Yes,
it's research, Tracy. It's research.
It's research. Yeah, anything. I'm sorry, Sarah. What were you talking about?
No, I don't even know. Oh,
Magic Mike.
Pleasure Club, because I believe all ladies should have a pleasure club at their disposal if they require it. So she kind of runs the show in London now. She women are very grateful for Grace and her world, the world that she's created, and she's incredibly powerful. And in comes this guy who also is very powerful, but in a very different way. And so it's a little bit rivals to lovers. It's a little bit enemies to lovers. It's a little bit long lost childhood love. And it's the end of a series. So,
well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, Tracy.
Okay. So this one is. It does. Okay, so this is my book. This one is Like Lovers Do. It comes out on August 25th, so a week from Tuesday. It is the second book in my Girls Trip series. And this one is a friends to lovers fake relationship story. And so Nick, well, I guess I should back up. So the Girls Trip series is based on sort of like my real life friendship with a group of women I met in college. And a few years after we graduated, we went on vacation together and had such a good time that we decided to make it this annual thing. And so every year for the past like 21 years, we've gone on vacation together. COVID effed it up this year. Thank you, COVID. But, we still talk, we Zoom a lot. But anyway, so this series is sort of based on that real life friendship. So it's a group of 4 friends who met in college, and every year they go away together. And so the idea of the series is that in each book, you'll sort of meet the friends on vacation, and then whoever the heroine of the book is will have her story. And so the first book was Kayla, and she got her happy ever after. The second book is Nick, who I love. Nick is an orthopedic surgeon. She is driven. She takes nothing from no one. She is a badass. Really, I know a lot of people say that, but Nick is, I will put my money on Nick every time. And she is a surgeon. She's good at her job. She's worked hard for her position. And in the course of doing her job and reprimanding an intern who is the son of a very powerful donor, it threatens a fellowship, which is very important for her career. And so when that happens, she turns to her best friend, Ben, one of her best friends, whose family happens to be sort of like this medical dynasty. And they sort of agree to swap services. So in exchange for him talking to his parents and having his parents sort of intervene on Nick's behalf for her fellowship, she agrees to pretend to be his girlfriend on this Martha Vineyard trip with his friends because his ex wants to come along, sort of get back in his life. And so a week on the beach, and them pretending to be more than friends, and a little hot hammock sex later. There you go.
I was going to say, and hammock sex.
Yeah.
Okay, that leads me to my favorite question that I like to ask romance writers, who, by the way, are always my favorite as people to interview because they're so much fun. Okay, do you guys block out your sex scenes before you write them?
Like, do you mean practice? No. No. But I definitely have, here is the thing that is true.
Okay.
I have definitely, first of all, writing sex scenes, Tracey may feel differently, but for me, writing sex scenes is work and not pleasure.
I'm not talking you physically do it with somebody else.
No, but I will say this. But every once in a while, I'll be like writing a scene and I'll be like, is that physically possible? And this is not like our friend Joanna Shoup, who like did some research to make sure you could have full penetrative sex in a carriage. This is like, if my hand is here and his hand is here, is it sexy or weird? And like periodically I'll call my husband and be like, just stand there for a second. I need to think.
Yeah. It's not fun. It is not like, it's not a fun thing. And in fact, what I tend to do is I'll be writing, and when I get to the point that it's a sex scene, I'll be like, insert sex scene here and move on. And then just come back to it and like, okay, today is the day I'm writing this scene. And that's how I approach it. And like Sarah said, there may be times when usually it's like height things, or sort of like if I'm turned here, how would his hand be, that I will call my husband in. And there may be instances like when you're writing a hammock sex scene and you don't have a hammock nearby, and you might be like, will that work? And then I turn to the interwebs where lots of
but also
about how one would do certain things
in a hammock. For example. No, but truthfully, like, I think that the hardest thing about writing sex scenes when you get sort of further along in your career is making them fresh, not in the sense of like the characters are always different, and so the scene itself always has a freshness if you're, doing the right thing with your characters. But like, how many beds can you have sex in? So like my books, it's always like, well, where can they do it this time?
Yes.
Exactly. Do you have a spreadsheet where you're like, okay, bed, bathroom?
It's like green eggs and ham style. Like, would you do it on a train? Would you do it in a plane?
It's like, the couch. No, wait a minute. I think in book 3 they did on the couch. Okay, where can they, it's that sort of
thing. Next to the couch. But then if there's a coffee table and a couch, why not go to the couch?
Well, because it's urgency.
Really. It could be. Some couches are too plushy. There's not enough,
Too low, too high. We can make it. Anything is plausible in a romance novel when it comes to sex. Yes, I will say this: copy editors crack me up, and I'm sure Tracey has stories like this too, where a copy editor will say something. I actually just wrote a short medieval novella for an anthology that's coming out next year. That's all of the stories are kind of retellings of Arthurian legend, and I'm the only romance writer in this anthology. So when I said yes, I asked the editors, like, can I put sex in my book? And they in my story, and they were like, well, yes, because you're the romance writer we were expecting you to. So I put sex in the book, and then I got the copy editor notes back, and they were like, this seems like it would be uncomfortable. Can they have, because they're on, I'll spoil it. They have sex on a stone because it's Arthurian legend. And of course they have sex on the stone.
Yes, they do.
Oh, so many dirty jokes.
The sword and the stone.
And the stone.
And literally the copy editor was like, this feels like it would be uncomfortable. Like, could they maybe have sex on the grass near the stone? And I was like,
everything was uncomfortable back then.
Pardon me, ma'am. I'm the professional. I'll say what's uncomfortable. So anyway, they still have sex on the stone.
Good.
Don't. Stick to your vision, Sarah. Stick to it.
Spoiler.
Own it.
But no, I do love it, and I also love when copy editors do things like, if he's kneeling, would he be able to reach, or whatever. So God bless the copy editors.
That's what you should ask about blocking.
Maybe do block it out.
Yeah, maybe they do.
I was on here with a friend of mine who's an author, Jillian, and we were discussing the similar questions, and her editors were in the audience, and so they were answering.
Oh,
It was
that would be really
fun.
interesting.
It was really funny. Yeah. Okay, so we talked a little bit about Tracey's your inspiration for your story, which came from your girlfriends, which I totally like. When I read it, I was like, yes, because I am still close best friends with all the girls that I met like my freshman year. Like we get together once or twice a week on Zoom because they live all over the world and we discuss books. Like I felt that relationship when you were talking about that. I was like, yeah, that's so real. So real. And recounting old stories. Oh, geez.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, that's the best part of like our get-togethers is, you know, of course, just seeing them and being with them. But then it's like, you know, a couple of drinks in, it's like, remember that guy? Remember when you did this? Remember when that happened? And that's just, yeah, that's so fun.
Sarah, where do you get your ideas from?
My ideas always come. The series ideas always come usually from conversations that I have with people. So, this series, The Bare Knuckle Bastards, came with Grace's story first, the heroine of this most recent book, actually, because I had talked to somebody who she grew up the only daughter of aging parents, and they had really wanted to have a son. And they basically raised her to be as much of a son to them as they could. Like they pushed her to play sports and to be interested in like the family business, not because she was family, but because like if they had had a son, then he would have, you know, been in charge. A very patriarchal kind of world. And I started to get really interested in the idea that that could still exist in, you know, in 2020. So what did it look like in, you know, the Regency? I spent a lot of time going like, this is an interesting story. What would it look like in the Regency? Or in this case, Victorian England. So like, you know, my last series was modern celebrity scandals, like set down in the 1820s and 30s. And because like, what does a sex tape look like if it's set in 1830? Because it's not a sex tape, but surely, you know, scandal existed.
They'd have to have like an etcher there, like copying it down at the same time, like
so well, it's a nude painting.
Okay. No, hold still.
Exactly.
So Sarah, I like the backstory on your series, and I just, to be honest, just read your latest one, and I really enjoyed it. It made me want to go back, and I will definitely be hand selling them to people coming looking for historical romance.
Thank you.
But okay, so there's how many brothers and one sister, and
there are 3 half brothers and a girl who is not related to them. But that's an important piece of the arc of the story. They are not related. But the 3 half brothers are brought together to essentially like Hunger Games style compete for the dukedom that is their father. They are all bastard sons of a duke, and they have to compete to become duke. So after one of them wins, by threatening to kill all the others, their lives are all in danger, and so they run. The 2 boys run, and they take the girl with them. And so those 3, that trio grows up in London like family. So 2 half brothers and their sister, if in spirit, if not in blood. Except and then the 3rd brother is the villain of the first 2 books, and he does a lot of terrible things in those first 2 books, and then he shows up and he becomes the hero of the 3rd book, which is a big ship to turn around.
Yeah. Like, how did you do that? You went from like he was evil to he's not evil. That had to have been hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a pretty classic romance trope, though. It's called morality chain. And essentially the premise is, and it's also it's a premise in a lot of media in general, is like love. A hero is a bad dude potentially, but love actually pulls him along, like the line of ethics to like being a decent, noble person. In this particular case, this hero had a lot of like his reasoning for doing all the things that he had done in the past was known to him and known to me, but not to readers and to the heroine. So it was me asking readers to trust me as I brought them back to.
And we would, because as readers of romance, of the genre, we, like you said, we know sort of our tropes and our stories. And so even as I'm reading the first book and I'm understanding the relationship or what we know of the relationship at that point, I'm pretty certain that those two are going to be a couple. And he does do some bad things. And in my head, what I'm saying is their book, she's going to explain the things that we need to know. There's going to be some background to why certain actions were taken. And by the time we get to the end of that book, she will have done her job and we will be happy that they're together. It's just trusting and going along on that ride.
But it's interesting because it is really about, the tropes of the genre rules. Like when Tracey, I mean, part of the joy of like Lovers Do, for example, is, so Tracey's playing with a very classic trope here, right? Friends to lovers is like, it's one of the biggies. but one of the promises of that premise is this idea that like, you've loved this person for so long, but you've never quite seen them the way all of a sudden you start to see them. And so there's this like breathless kind of panic and anxiety that like now your feelings are changing and everything becomes awkward. What was totally normal is now just a little bit off kilter. And then you have hammock sex and you're like, what is happening? Having hammock sex all this time.
It wasn't always a hammock.
Yeah, he's like, I thought we were friends, but you've known that this could be for 3 years and you haven't shared it. I don't know. Yeah.
And there's that moment. I mean, Tracey, you know how much I love your writing, and like, you know how much, I mean, I would read Tracey's like grocery list with pleasure. But the way that she manipulates Friends to Lovers, it just, you nailed every single moment in Friends to Lovers that we look for as a reader. And I think like that's that's what romance does, is like, as readers, we know exactly what we want, and the best books deliver exactly the promise of the premise.
Yeah. That leads me to a question I wanted to ask you guys. Hold on, I wrote it down. Okay. Do you try to be more original, or do you want to deliver to readers what they want? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think the thing that I think a lot of people hear about, especially writers, when they first start, is this idea of your voice and what is your voice and what does that mean? And once you understand that, and what you write is original, because no one has the upbringing you have. No one has the experiences you have. We see things differently just because we're all unique individuals. And so that comes, into play when it comes to writing. So you could give Sarah and I the exact same story and we would write totally different books because our minds would start working in different ways. And so I think when, I'm writing Friends to Lovers or whatever story that I'm writing, there are certain characteristics of that that you should include because it's Friends to Lovers, but the way I write my story should be different than someone else because I'm trying to be true to my voice and my experiences. And the same thing with Sarah. So I don't think it's an issue of trying to be unique or delivering, because I think when you deliver, you'll deliver uniquely and your reader will be looking for that. They're looking for a Sarah McLean book and they're looking for her to write it the way she writes it. So those things to me go hand in hand.
No, that's really well said. So what you're saying is, if you're starting out writing, just to relax and not worried that you're following the regular tropes. Just do your thing and write.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's ballet in a phone booth, right? All genre fiction is ballet in a phone booth. Like, so you are bound by the restrictions of whatever the genre is, right? Like in romance novels, it's the happily ever after. They have to end up together and it has to be satisfying. In mystery novels, we have to figure out who did it. You know, every genre has, that's what makes it genre fiction. There are bounds. And so our work is to perform within it. And I think that's what brings readers back again and again. I mean, it's the same way that you can say to me, like, all you have to say to me is there's only one bed, right? And I'm like, there, that's all I need, right? I'm here for 400 pages. If at some point in those 400 pages, these idiots have to share a bed, like without wanting to, or rather without choosing to.
All the other rooms in the hotel are booked. There has to be this.
Exactly. I'm so sorry.
No bed.
Right.
Oh no, there's never, like, what's amazing is that also as a romance reader, it's like, I don't even need them to like call the front desk and ask for a cot. Yeah. Like, I just believe it. I'm like, oh, clearly it's a very busy small town in the middle of nowhere and there's only one bed.
You have to give us a little bit, right? Because we know they want to do it anyway. We know they do. You just have to give us a little reason. Oh, it's snowing outside and homecoming. Well, there you go.
I mean, there it is. Sounds plausible.
So one of my favorite things about romance writers is that they are some of the smartest people I have ever met. I've done a couple conventions with Georgia romance writers, and they are so smart. Professors, judges.
Great.
Yes.
Great ones down there in Georgia.
And I'm always like, because, you know, people are like, oh, I don't want to read romance. It's just silly. And I'm like, no, it's not. The best conversations come out of romance writers. Like when they write dialogue, it is really well done. And a lot of great authors can, you know, say the reason they're so good is because they started out in romance. So I have such big respect for romance writers. So
thank you.
That wasn't really a question. But we do have one over here. Sarah, are you gonna get Tracey on your podcast?
In fact, I am, Christine. Tracey's going to be on the podcast maybe like next month, sometime in September, to talk about friends to lovers romances and why they work. So
tell us about your podcast.
Oh, I have a podcast called Fated Mates. And it's me and Jen Prokop, who is a romance critic. And we are just this Wednesday begins season 3, and it comes out every Wednesday. And it is deep dive episodes where we read books that we think are important to the genre, or books that we think really like push the boundaries of romance in some way. And then episodes where we deep dive on a trope, maybe with a guest like Tracey. Or other, just where we talk through like, what is it about There's Only One Bed that works for readers? What is it that makes us want to read it more? How does it scratch an itch? And we just talk about the work and the power and the importance of romance, and of, you know, centering the gaze of like people who deserve to like see themselves in big media. So
the thing that's great about that podcast is, you know, it started out sort of like, we are rereading, you know, Presley Cole's Bordeaux After Dark. I say we, but I mean like that. That's what that
was the first season.
Yes, and you would think, well, where do they go from there? And they went everywhere. They started, you know, with the books, but then they did these interstitials, which I love, which are about tropes and inviting guests on. And then they've gone on to different books and different series. And all of it is a deep dive and intellectual conversations about the genre and why we love it, and why it's important in a way that we don't always get outside of the genre, actually. So, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and thank you. I mean, that was the idea from the beginning, is we didn't want to have to defend romance anymore. I get real tired. I'm sure Tracey does too, of having to defend it. So we started a podcast that was really about celebrating it and talking about all the different ways that it really blows the doors off, you know, in the world. So, and we're starting season 3, episode 92.
Wow.
So
I put a link in the comments. If anybody wants to check that out, you should. I'm going to do it for sure. So, what are you guys working on right now?
Tracey, do you want to go?
Sure. I am working on the next book in the Girls Trip series, and I am working on a new series. I can't say much more about that, but yeah, I'm excited.
I am working on a new series too. It's called Hell's Bells. The first book comes out in the summer, but it doesn't have a title yet. So I don't have any real information aside from telling you that it's 4 books and it's a Victorian era girl gang, based on a real life Victorian era girl gang, where people, where, you know, this particular group of women in my books is a real sisterhood. Speaking of sisterhoods in romances, I've written sisters in romances, and I've written lots and lots of brotherhoods in romances, but I've never written a group of women who are really like connected from the start. And so I'm really enjoying that. It feels like exactly the book that I want to be writing right now in this world, right this second. But essentially these 4 women have a ton of power that they've kind of amassed quietly around the edges of, you know, money and power in London in the 1830s. And if you are a woman and you have a problem, these 4 are basically like the A-team for you.
Yeah.
And I will say this, I originally planned them all, like I planned them all out. And then I literally had a moment where I was like, oh my God, what if they actually are the A-team? Like, what if the archetypes are related to the original A-team archetypes? And I'm so delighted by it that I'm not promising, but like there is definitely, and I love it when a plan comes together kind of character. So I'm not going to promise it, but maybe, and there might be a big giant carriage where they all ride in together. At this point, I'm like, who cares? Just
That's great. Oh my God, I will totally read that. What's
Victorian era A-team?
HB side of the carriage. Oh my God.
So, what's y'all's writing styles? Are you pantsers, plotters?
We're different.
Yeah,
we're very different. You go first.
Yeah, I'm a plotter. I'm a type A person, and so I come up with an idea, whether it's character based or plot based depends. But I come up with the idea. I come up with my characters. I cast them, so I have pictures of who everyone is. I do like a sheet where I've sort of roughly figured out character arcs, a little bit of the plot, and I do all of that before I sit down to write. Wow. It doesn't mean that I know every scene, I don't go that far, but I do sort of know a lot before I sit down and write, because I'm the type of person that the thought of writing 30,000 words and not using that, I can't even speak it.
You can see the hives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that's very useful. I can't. Yeah, no. So I am a plotter.
I'm not. I'm not a plotter.
You planned out the book series.
So here's the interesting thing about that. I'm not a plotter, but I can't start a book unless I know what the end is. And when I say that, I mean like romance readers will appreciate this. There's a moment at the very end of every romance novel where you feel like all is lost. Like it's not possible for these two to actually functionally be together for whatever reason. And I need to know what that moment is and where it is. Like it's very clear to me always, that moment. and then ultimately like how that unravels, right?
Mhm.
And I can't start the book until I know that. And then the best way I can explain it is kind of imagine you woke up in the morning and you had to get to the grocery store, but the roads you would ordinarily take to the grocery store are all closed. You have to sort of like figure out how to get there. And so you're kind of driving, maybe you're taking some weird detours, who knows? So for me, but when I write a series, I always know the series are all pretty like connected.
Mhm.
And so I always know what the end game is. So in this series, The Bare Knuckle Bastards, I knew what that moment was in book 3 4 years ago when I pitched it. And so the books were moving forward toward that end game on sort of a larger scale. And then each book had a kind of a smaller end game that I had to get to, if that makes sense. So with Hell's Bells, for example, I know what's going to happen in book 4 right now, and I'm writing book 1.
Oh.
But I don't know what's going to happen in between now and then.
I'm like like impressed and equal like what you're doing. Like I know.
horrified.
Yeah, like
terrible.
Yes.
I hear myself say it and it makes me want to throw up.
So
you're weird.
No, it's all good.
And I mean, but I also feel like at the beginning of every book, I like open a new document and I stare at the blank page and I think, how do you do this? Like I don't even know. I don't know how to write a book.
It's crazy.
How many books have you written that you don't know how to write a book?
I just finished my 16th.
That's crazy.
And I don't know how. Like yeah.
I'll read like I'm listening to the audio of Like Lovers Do, and I'm listening to it like, oh, like I tied that together. Like I did it. I don't know how I did it.
No.
The author Tracey Livesay, she did a good job. I'm just like, how did she do that? I don't know how she did it. And I, start writing now, and it feels like I'll never get there.
No.
I'm gonna do this. Yeah.
Well, it's partially why I never talk about the plots of my books until I'm past the 200-page mark, which is me being superstitious, because I feel like once I hit 200 pages, the only way out is through, right? But before I hit 200 pages, it's actually like less work to just toss it all out and start over.
Not me. We will make these 200 pages.
So did you guys have anybody like special growing up that really like influenced you and encouraged you to be writers?
No. Honestly, I didn't. Okay. Right. Yeah. Like, again, this is my second career, and I've always written, and I've always been a reader, a big reader. I mean, that was pretty much what I was known for. And, I remember my dad reading to me like the childcraft books when I was really young. Like, I've always been a reader, but the thought of being a writer as a career was not something that was ever thought of for me. It, no, it was, I became an attorney. But yeah, there was no sort of concept that you were going to be a writer, even though I would write, plays for church and everyone loved them. But that was just a nice little hobby. That wasn't what I was going to do for a career. So I would say the people that motivated me, or that believed in me, sort of believed in me in a way to say, you can do whatever you put your mind to. Like, I know that you see big things for yourself, and you can. I have every faith that you can do it. But it wasn't to become a writer. It was to, go to college, graduate, law school, etc. Yeah.
want to be a romance novelist forever. I mean, I've been a romance reader forever. But it never seemed like it was a real job. I mean, it feels like a weird, like nobody actually does this for a job.
It's like a character in a romance book. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, like what? This isn't a real job. Joanna Lindsay's not a real person. So no, I mean, I went off and I also had a completely different career. I worked in PR, and then I worked in education research for a while. But for me, I think that, so not long ago, I grew up in Rhode Island, and not long ago I was in Rhode Island and I was at a book signing, and a woman came in and she sat at the back of the room, and she was a little late to the signing, and I saw her come in, and I had one of those moments where I like stopped in the middle of a sentence, because she was my high school history teacher. And she was my favorite teacher when I was in high school, and I just adored her. And I took European history with her and in my senior year, and I had to write. And afterwards she came up to me and she said, I don't know if you remember this, but when you were in European history with me and I assigned like a primary source paper, and you chose this couple from history that you had read a romance novel about. And it was Eleanor Plantagenet and Simon de Montfort from Virginia Henley's The Dragon and the Jewel, which is real old school. And she was like, and you decided you were going to do this couple, and you went off and you found all this primary source material, and then you wrote me like a 10-page paper on these people, and you handed in your draft, and I responded to you that all of it had, like, none of it could actually be in the paper because it was all like hyperbolic, like dramatic retellings of their life. And she was like, so I told you had to like go back to the sources and write a real paper. And you turned in a 20-page paper at the end of it that was 10 pages of real and then 10 pages of footnotes, because you just moved everything into the footnotes. That was not like provable. And she's like, and I knew then, Sarah, that you were going to do this. And I died. And I would honestly, there is very little I would not give up to have a copy of that paper now. So I didn't know then that I would not, I have never really put it together until you just asked that question, but I guess Kathleen Moylan, my high school history teacher, was like on board the Sarah McLean train. So
that's the best story I've ever heard. I question, that's my favorite response. We have a audience. Sarah, it's authors like you and Vanessa Riley who are writing progressive stories based on actual people and events that made me try out the whole Regency type historical romance. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for reading. And Vanessa is so great. Her most recent book is A Duke, the Lady, and a Baby. And it is really fabulous. And talk about somebody, she's Georgia. She's in the Georgia Romance Writers group. And I mean, talk about somebody who just like nails that. Like, her research is just impeccable, and she always has these really fascinating characters who just make you want to dive into her books and live there for a while if you could have antibiotics.
Flushing clear.
So whenever anybody says, wouldn't you love to live in the Regency? I'm like, hell no, I need antibiotics and tampons.
Yeah. So that brings me to one of my favorite questions is, who would you like to recommend? Who are you reading? Who do you want to talk about? Let us know. What do you think? I'm gonna put them down here in the comments so everybody can buy them.
Yeah.
Wait,
I actually have a list.
Yes.
I have a recent list.
Okay. I'm ready.
Tracy's actually at the top of this list, like lovers do, but I won't. I'll this Tracey Livesay person. I am
good.
wild about Alexis Daria's new book, You Had Me at Hola, which I actually have a copy of right here. I just happen to have it on my desk. This is Alexis. Nobody writes celebrities like Alexis. I feel like we all love this. I really love a celebrity romance, but like Alexis just knocks them out of the park over and over and over again. This book is about the heroine is an actress who's been through like this has had a terrible breakup that's like splashed across the tabloids. Mm-hmm. And the hero is a soap opera actor who was killed off in like a very terrible way. Like think Joey Tribbiani, but hot, right? Like, yeah, and it's a telenovela, right? So and now they've both been put on they've both been hired to be in a new kind of Netflix style streaming telenovela for, you know, everyone on Netflix. It's kind of like a big show on Netflix. And they are thrown together, and there's like they're awkward, and it's very like weird and uncomfortable for them because they're super attracted to each other, but also very awkward, and they have to practice kissing, which I love. Like kissing practice is pretty great. And Alexis writes these incredible scenes in between the chapters that are from the perspective of the characters on the telenovela. Ooh, and
it's the show.
Yeah.
I want this show. It's called Carmen in Charge, and I want Netflix to do the show. Netflix.
Yeah.
Do the show.
Agreed. Somebody call your friends.
Yes.
If you know somebody in Netflix, call your friends. The books are You Had Me at Hola, Like Lovers Do, and Daring and the Duke, and send them to them.
Here.
Yes, it's good. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, the idea of writing a show within the book, so you have the character, you also have these glimpses of what the show that they're acting on would be. Yeah, it's fantastic, and
it's
really good.
So like soapy, like it has that like really intense. The feel of the book is this like glamorous, like delicious, dramatic.
And when you talk about sisterhood, I mean, the heroine of the book has her two cousins, and they're close, and like their text exchanges and stuff crack me up. So, yeah, it's really, really good. So definitely. Okay. And I would like to come in with one, because Sarah she reads like way more. I don't know how she can do it. But I love audiobooks. That is true. I just finished reading Dating Makes Perfect by Pentip Dunn, and I can't tell you how much I love that book. It's a YA. It comes out on Tuesday. It's an own voice tie. She had a challenge going on social media where people like recreated the cover. But it's so good. It's about a girl who is the younger sister of twin older sisters who go off to college. And the older sisters, when they were in high school, couldn't date at all. So then they go to college and they start dating. And the parents think, well, within a few months, they'll be announcing their engagement. And they're like, oh, no, we're not into that at all. So the mom and I guess the dad think it's a good idea to have the younger sister practice dating while she's in high school, so that when she gets to college, she'll be ready to get married and get engaged. And so the boy they pick out for her is a boy who used to be her best friend. And at some point they had a falling out, and now they're mortal enemies. And so they pretend dating. It is a YA. It is the chastest thing I've read lately. And yet I was painting at the like looks between them, or like just the moment when they're getting ready to kiss, but then they get interrupted. I'm like, insane. And then because it's Thai voices, there's so much about the culture that's in there. And it's woven in just as it's just life, you know, and books like that are what I love, because it takes this universal thing of falling in love and we put them in different cultures, and you see we're not so different. You know, we all want the same thing. We all, you know, are in these situations, but yet you get to learn about a culture you probably would never know about or be exposed to. It was brilliantly done, and I adored it. I did. Yeah, sorry, I'm gushing. But
no, I love it because this is when authors get the chance to be a bookseller. Like for the past 10 minutes, you guys just basically do what I do for a living, and I love it because it's not like I can go write a book. So
you have a very good job. This is basically, if I could have any job, it would be this job. Just shouting at people about romance novels. Like that's
idea that we
were talking about. Is a romance writer like a real job, and is a bookseller a real job? That's a great question.
It's a pretty great job. We both have pretty good jobs, I think. Can I also just add a historical to this mix? Because we've already talked about Vanessa, who would have been on my list, but I want to shout out Joanna Shoup, who is writing, so many of us are writing British set, like 19th century historicals, and Joanna is writing American set Gilded Age. So the 1890s in New York City. Her current series is called The Uptown Girls. And those of you who are Hamilton fans, imagine if like the Schuyler sisters were picked up and dropped down in like Gilded Age, New York City, 1890s, and they roll downtown and they find themselves criminals to fall in love with. And they are unbelievable, these books. The most recent one, The Devil of Downtown, and he is indeed the devil of downtown, if you know what I mean. Hammock sex from Tracey, bowling sex from Joanna Shoup, which I never would have expected would have been something I would have said out loud. But the truth is that it is so good. And I mean, I don't know, Gilded Age bowling, man. But also, don't sleep on Joanna. I think she is like one of the best historical writers writing today.
Totally.
All right.
Yes.
All right, guys, it's about that time. This has been an absolute blast. That's why I love romance writers. You guys are so much fun. So, okay. So please support your local independent bookstore. You don't have to get Tracey's and Sarah's books from me, but please buy them from an indie bookstore. Although I would love for you to get them from me. We have them in stock. You can buy them off our website and we'll ship them directly to you if you don't live local. If you live local, that'd be even cooler. You can come in as long as you have a mask on. In fact, I started this interview and before you guys logged on, I was masked up because I'm in the store right now. At RBG, we sell those.
Yes.
Can I just say also, I'm betting that you use the postal service a whole lot to ship books. So if you love your local indie, make sure you love your local post office too.
I was thinking about actually taking a picture of our next shipment through the USPS, like of all our package and be like, this is what we do because we've always supported the post office. We've never shipped from anybody else. So especially when we ship overseas. Okay, back to it. Thank you guys for doing this. I love this.
Thanks for having us.
Have another book come out. That would be so much fun. We can have a follow-up. We can talk about where Tracey writes her next big sex scene. Let's see. You did a hammock. So
it's got a
bookstore. Independent bookstore.
I was thinking like scaffolding, like on top of scaffolding.
That sounds dangerous.
Adds a little something.
They're trying to break into something and they're on a landing. I don't know. I'm just coming up.
Yeah. It'll be good.
All right. Thank you again. Good night.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.